We often think the key to attraction is in what we say, how we look, or the confidence we exude. And sure, those things matter. But what if I told you that the real key, the thing that makes her truly captivated by you, is not what you say about yourself, but what you ask her? Most men are busy trying to impress, to perform, to showcase their worth. Few ever stop and create a moment of curiosity, of tension, of internal pause. That moment, that rare spark where she wonders, what is it about him, is where the true seduction begins. You see, we're wired as human beings to respond to mystery. Not mystery in the sense of hiding or being evasive, but in the form of a question that opens the door to something uncharted inside us. When you ask a woman something that pulls her into her own emotional landscape, something that invites her to explore herself, she associates that moment of discovery with you. Not because you gave her an answer, but because you created the space for a question. This isn't about manipulation, it's about presence. It's about understanding that in a world flooded with superficial validation and dopamine-driven distractions, the most irresistible thing you can offer someone is your attention, filtered through curiosity. When you ask her something that's not about what she's wearing, not about what she does for work, but about what keeps her up at night, what lights her up, what she hides behind her smile, you do what very few are willing or capable of doing. You see her, and that is intoxicating. Now let's be clear, this doesn't mean you walk up to someone and drop a heavy existential question out of nowhere. That would be socially tone deaf and, let's face it, a bit awkward. The art lies in layering. You begin where it's natural, a compliment, a shared observation, a bit of humor, but from there you steer. You guide the conversation with an intention to go deep. You ask something like, what's something you've always wanted to do but never told anyone because they might not get it? And then you wait. Most men, especially when they ask questions, are already halfway into their next sentence. They don't really listen. But if you can hold that silence, if you can stay with her in that pause, in that discomfort, in that stretch of vulnerability, you become unforgettable. Because you're not trying to fix, not trying to perform, not trying to win. You're just there, present, curious. And let me tell you, that kind of presence is rare. So rare that when a woman feels it, it rattles her. It gets under her skin, not in a way that irritates, but in a way that lingers. Because most of us are starving to be asked better questions. We live in a world where everyone's shouting, very few are listening, and even fewer are asking. When you ask something meaningful, you allow someone to see themselves differently, and they will associate that transformation with you. Now, the real mastery comes when you understand that these questions are not tools of seduction alone. They're expressions of your own emotional intelligence. Your ability to ask a powerful question is rooted in your own self-awareness. You can't invite someone to go somewhere emotionally that you haven't been willing to go yourself. So if you want to ask her something that drives her crazy in the best possible way, start by cultivating that curiosity in your own life. Ask yourself, what do I fear people might not understand about me? What's the one thing I wish someone would see in me without me having to say it? That self-inquiry sharpens your instinct for intimacy, because real intimacy isn't about proximity. It's about being witnessed. It's about being met. And that begins with a question, not for an answer, but for connection. And women, just like men, are drawn to those who have the courage to ask not what is easy, but what is true. So next time you're sitting across from her, whether it's the first date or the 50th, resist the urge to fill the space with facts about yourself. Instead, offer her a space that says, I want to know who you are, beneath the roles you play, beyond the stories you've rehearsed. Ask her something that makes her pause, that pulls her out of autopilot, that bypasses the mask and touches the person. Ask her something that makes her feel seen, because the moment she feels truly seen, she won't forget you. And when you do that, when you lead with presence, with emotional bravery, with curiosity rather than ego, you don't just impress her, you move her. Ask her something that makes her look at you differently. That's when everything changes. You know, in relationships, and I say this not just romantically, but in every form of human connection, there's an unspoken hunger. It's the need to be seen, yes, but also to be felt at our core. To be understood, not just in the context of what we do or say, but in who we are underneath all of that. And here's where most men miss the mark. They stay on the surface, they play it safe, they keep the conversation in the realm of fact. But facts rarely inspire desire. It's feelings that move people. It's emotional resonance that creates intimacy. The truth is, a woman doesn't crave answers, perfection, or certainty. She craves connection. She wants to feel that her emotions matter, that what she holds inside, her longings, her doubts, her contradictions can exist safely in your presence. And the most powerful way to offer that safety isn't through compliments or promises. It's through asking questions that invite her into her own emotional world. This is where emotional depth becomes not only attractive but magnetic. When you ask her something like, "What's something that's changed you but no one really knows about?" you do something extraordinary. You shift the interaction from performance to presence. You give her an opening not just to talk, but to feel. And more importantly, to feel with you. You see, the feminine doesn't respond to logic alone. She responds to emotional energy. When you meet her with emotional curiosity, you're speaking her language. You're telling her, "I can handle the complexity of who you are." And that, right there, is rare. That makes you stand out, not as someone trying to win her over, but as someone strong enough to witness her truth. But let me pause here, because this part is important. Emotional depth doesn't mean intensity for intensity's sake. It's not about diving into trauma or prying into her wounds. That's not emotional intelligence. That's intrusion. Emotional depth is about presence without pressure. It's about asking questions that open the door gently, then waiting patiently to see if she wants to walk through it. It's an invitation, not an interrogation. And it requires emotional literacy on your part. You can't hold space for someone else's feelings if you're disconnected from your own. So many men try to be stoic, to be unreadable, thinking that makes them strong. But there's nothing strong about emotional avoidance. Real strength is the ability to sit with discomfort, your own and hers, to not rush to fix it, explain it, or avoid it, but to stay with it. That's what creates emotional safety. And emotional safety is the foundation of trust. Without trust, you can't build desire, you can't sustain connection, and you certainly can't go deep. So what does this look like in practice? It looks like being attuned not just to what she says, but to how she says it. When she shares something that carries weight, don't pivot away. Stay with it, reflect it back. Say, "That sounds like it really shaped you," or "What was that like for you?" These aren't complex phrases, but they show that you're engaged, that you're tracking, that you care. And that emotional feedback loop is what creates chemistry on a whole different level. When she feels emotionally seen by you, something subtle but powerful happens. Her guard lowers, not because you demanded it, but because you earned it. You became a mirror, not one that reflects her image, but one that reflects her inner experience. And in doing that, you become the exception, the one who did just want her body, her beauty, her attention, but the one who wanted her truth. This is where attraction shifts from fleeting to unforgettable. It's no longer about the rush of validation or the performance of seduction. It's about emotional attunement. It's about giving her something she rarely gets in a world of distraction and pretense. And I want to say something here that might feel counterintuitive. Emotional depth isn't about being serious all the time. It's not about becoming her therapist. In fact, one of the most powerful things you can do is to integrate emotional questions with lightness and warmth. You can ask her something deep with a smile, with a spark in your eyes. You can make her laugh and think in the same breath. That balance of curiosity and levity, of warmth and awareness, is what makes you not just desirable, but irresistible. Because ultimately we are all walking stories, and when someone asks you the right question, one that touches your core, it's like they open a chapter you forgot you even wrote, and suddenly, in the presence of that person, you remember who you are. That's what emotional depth does. It reintroduces people to themselves, and they remember you as the one who brought them there. So I'll leave you with this. The next time you sit across from a woman, ask her something that awakens her, not impresses her. Ask her something that makes her feel, not just understood, but felt. Because when you speak to her heart, her mind will follow. But if you only speak to her mind, her heart may never arrive. Emotional depth isn't a technique, it's a way of being. And when you choose to live and love from that place, you don't just connect, you transform. There's a fascinating paradox at the heart of attraction. The more you try to be obvious about your desire, the more invisible you become. And yet, the more artfully you allow your interest to hover just out of reach, the more magnetic you become. This is the subtle power of flirtation, not as manipulation, but as playful mystery. And nowhere is this more potent than when you flirt through curiosity, when your interest is expressed not through pressure or performance, but through intelligent, emotionally attuned questions that tease, hint, and challenge. You begin to stir something far deeper than surface attraction. Most people think of flirting as a set of behaviors, compliments, body language, witty remarks, and yes, those have their place. But true flirtation, the kind that creates tension, the kind that lingers, is about implication, not declaration. It's about the unsaid. It's about suggesting just enough for her to wonder, to lean in, to ask herself, what is he really thinking? And one of the most effective ways to create that kind of tension is by asking the right kind of question. Not the heavy, emotional kind we discussed earlier. That's a different layer of intimacy. What I'm talking about here is lighter, but no less potent. These are questions that flirt with her intelligence, her identity, her imagination. Questions that show you see her, but not entirely. Questions that let her know you're interested, but that you're not chasing. That you're inviting her into a game, a dance, one where the stakes aren't desperate, but delightful. Let me give you an example. Instead of saying, "You're beautiful, try," you strike me as someone who's used to being in control. Do you ever let anyone else lead? What you've done in that one sentence is threefold. You've implied attraction, you've introduced intrigue, and you've invited her to play. It's suggestive, not explicit. It creates tension without expectation. Flirting through curiosity is so effective because it doesn't just compliment her, it involves her. You're not telling her what to think about you. You're giving her something to think about herself in your presence. And in doing that, you make the interaction feel personal, unique, alive. Here's the psychological truth behind it. Human beings are drawn to uncertainty. We want to solve puzzles, to complete stories. When something is too obvious, we disengage. But when there is a gap, when something is hinted at but not fully revealed, we lean in, we wonder. And that wondering is where desire lives. When you flirt through curiosity, you create a sense of emotional unfinishedness. And people don't walk away from what feels unfinished. But there's a line here, and I want to be clear. This isn't about being elusive to the point of detachment. It's about being present while still leaving room for play. When you're too mysterious, you feel cold. When you're too open, you feel predictable. The art is in the balance. You are both here and just out of reach. You are interested but not invested in the outcome. That emotional posture of calm, confident curiosity is incredibly attractive. Flirtation at its core is an acknowledgement of energy. It says, I see you, I'm tuned in, and I'm enjoying this exchange. And when that exchange is laced with a bit of challenge, when your question makes her pause, tilt her head, raise an eyebrow, you've sparked something. Not just interest, but intrigue. You've made her think, who is this man who asks me this? Why does he feel so different? This is where your tone and delivery matter just as much as the question itself. Because the same words can feel charming or creepy, depending on the energy behind them. So here's the key: lightness, warmth, a sense that you're enjoying yourself, that you're relaxed, that there's no agenda. You're not trying to get something, you're simply playing, exploring. Let me put it like this: when you flirt through curiosity, you're offering her a gift, not of attention alone, but of emotional stimulation. You're saying, let's co-create this moment. Let's build something here that's more than small talk. And she feels that. She feels that you're not just checking boxes. You're here with her, interested in who she is, not just what she looks like. And the deeper impact of this is often underestimated, because when a woman feels both seen and intrigued, when she feels safe enough to engage and challenged enough to stay interested, you become more than a passing interaction. You become memorable. The kind of man she thinks about later, not because you said something extraordinary, but because you made her feel extraordinary, smart, playful, alive. It's also worth mentioning that this style of interaction is incredibly rare. In a world where most people are either over-confessing or under-engaging, to hold a space of light tension and intelligent playfulness is to set yourself apart. It says you understand the dance of attraction, that you don't need to dominate, you can simply enjoy it. That's a level of self-possession that commands respect. And maybe this is the deeper point. Flirtation through curiosity isn't just about driving her crazy. It's about showing her you're already at ease with your own desire, that you're not in a rush to conquer, but that you enjoy the unfolding, that you find pleasure not just in the result, but in the process. And that kind of man is rare. So the next time you want to connect, ask her something that makes her feel herself in a new way, something that makes her pause, something that carries the faintest edge of flirtation wrapped in curiosity, something that says, I see you and I'd love to know a little more, but only if you're ready to share. Because when you flirt through curiosity, you don't just catch her attention, you hold it without ever having to ask for it. There's something profound that happens when a woman senses she is being chosen, not randomly, not out of convenience or loneliness, but with intention, when she feels that in a room full of possibilities, you are attuned specifically to her, not in a desperate way, not in a needy way, but from a place of grounded discernment. That level of selective attention has a gravity to it. It's magnetic, it's rare, and it's what drives her crazy in the best, most unforgettable way. Most people confuse attraction with attention. They think if you give someone more of your time, more messages, more compliments, more pursuit, that you're building connection. But what really deepens desire is not the volume of your attention, it's the quality. Women don't just want to be seen, they want to feel singled out. They want to know that your desire for them isn't generic, it's specific, deliberate, and above all, real. When you make her feel like the only one, not by telling her, but by the way you engage with her, the way you look at her, the way you ask her questions that you wouldn't ask anyone else. Something inside her shifts. She softens, she opens, not because you chased, but because you saw something in her that others missed. And when a woman feels that kind of recognition, it speaks directly to the core of her femininity, the desire to be chosen, not as a conquest, but as a mystery worth discovering. Now, I want to be clear. Making her feel like the only one has nothing to do with being overly available, with sacrificing your own boundaries, or with inflating her ego. That's performance. That's what happens when you seek approval. This isn't about performance. This is about presence, about your ability to witness her, not just her beauty or charm, but her essence, her contradictions, her vulnerabilities, her strength. That's what makes her feel truly seen. And it's that kind of seeing that stirs something deeper than physical desire. It evokes trust. And trust, when combined with tension, is what makes intimacy electric. But most men are too busy trying to prove themselves. They talk about their jobs, their status, their success. They try to impress her into wanting them. But here's the truth. When you're secure in yourself, you don't prove, you observe. You become curious about what makes her different. You notice the way she speaks, what she avoids, what lights her up. You reflect it back to her, not to flatter, but to affirm. You create a dynamic where she feels chosen, not for how she looks, but for who she is when she thinks no one's watching. So this kind of attention isn't loud. It's not flashy. It's subtle. It lives in the quiet precision of your presence, in the way you hold eye contact just a little longer when she reveals something real, in the way you smile, not because she said something funny, but because she said something honest, in the way you make her feel like she doesn't have to perform either, that she can just be and still hold your interest. That's what makes her crazy. That's what makes her wonder about you long after you've left the room. And here's the deeper philosophical piece. Most people go through life trying to be validated, but very few learn the power of validating others from a place of truth, not flattery. When you reflect someone's uniqueness back to them in a grounded way, you're not just building attraction, you're awakening their self-worth. And when a woman feels more herself in your presence than she does alone, that's when you stop being just another man. You become an experience. And experiences are what we crave most. We don't remember facts, we don't remember routines, we remember moments. Moments that changed how we saw ourselves. Moments that made us feel alive, desired, understood. And you don't create those moments by pushing. You create them by noticing. You create them by slowing down, by listening, by asking the kind of question that no one else has thought to ask, and then waiting without interrupting for her real answer. But here's where you must hold tension. Because while you want to make her feel like the only one, you must never make her feel like the only thing. You are a man with a full life, with purpose, direction, edges. You do not disappear into her. You do not orbit her approval. Your interest is real, but it is anchored in your own value, in your own path. This contrast between being fully present with her and completely centered in yourself is what creates a kind of attractive friction. It's the tension that makes her want to lean closer rather than pull away. So many men either overinvest emotionally or remain emotionally unavailable. But the rarest energy is this: the man who makes her feel deeply chosen without needing her, who desires her not from emptiness but from abundance, who sees her not as his salvation but as a sovereign being worthy of curiosity. That's what turns flirtation into fascination. That's what transforms chemistry into connection. To be that man, you must develop your own internal abundance. You must become selective, not just in your dating life, but in your attention. You must learn to reserve your energy for what moves you, what inspires you. When you bring that selectivity to a woman, when you let her know implicitly through how you show up, that she is not just another name in your phone, but someone who genuinely stirs something in you, you give her something few ever do, a sense of significance. And it's not about saying, I've never met anyone like you. It's about asking a question only she could answer. It's about observing something about her that no one else has named. It's about making her feel that in this moment you are nowhere else, that she holds your full attention, even if just for 5 minutes. That kind of intensity, when paired with warmth, leaves a lasting imprint. Because when she feels like the only one, not through grand gestures, but through subtle precision, she doesn't just feel desired, she feels understood. And understanding, my friends, is the gateway to devotion. So ask yourself, not what can I say to impress her, but rather,